Unit 5, Life in the New Republic, Chapter 14, Lesson 1, Public Lands and New Settlements. Why did people immigrate to the Republic of Texas? Here's the historic building. Castroville, nicknamed the Little Alsace of Texas, is located in eastern Medina County near San Antonio. The nickname refers to Alsace, France, which is a small region near the border with Germany. The settlement was founded in 1842 and by the 1850s boasted a number of impressive buildings. In 1852, the structure, the Hotel Tarde, was built. Today is a private residence and part of Castroville's historic walk. Salt mining in Texas. Grand Saline, Texas, is named for the salinas, which are the salt deposits in the region. Cherokee produced the first salt in the area in 1834. Originally called Jordan Saline, the town was renamed Grand Saline when it became a railroad depot for the Texas and Pacific Railway. Today, trolleys inside the mine are used to move loads of salt up to the surface where the salt is shipped elsewhere. Here's historic Germantown of Indianola, Texas. Tejano life in South Texas. Terms to know: headright grant, a grant of free land issued during the Republic to the head of a household. Tradition, a custom or habit. Homestead, a family home and its surrounding lands. Immigration agent, a person licensed and paid in land or money to bring settlers into a country. Artisan, a person skilled at making things by hand. Inhibit, to hold back or restrain. Immigrants come to the Republic. Guiding question: why did people immigrate to the Republic of Texas? In 1836, about 50,000 settlers lived in Texas. The Texas government wanted to attract more settlers. During the Republic, the government distributed almost 37 million acres, 15 million hectares of headright grants. These grants gave free land to heads of household. Most people with a headright grant settled, but some sold their grants. Many Americans who moved to Texas owed debts in the United States. The Republic continued the tradition of debt protection with the Homestead Act of 1839. A homestead is a family's home and land. The law protected up to 50 acres of land, the house, and any improvements from seizure by creditors. To bring in more people, the government hired immigration agents. Immigrants brought by the agents were granted 640 acres of land for a head of household, or 320 acres for a single person. At this time, German nobles founded the German Immigration Company. The company was a financial failure, but it brought more than 7,000 Germans to Texas. They founded New Braunfels and Fredericksburg and settled in Galveston, Houston, and San Antonio. Henry Castro brought about 2,000 people from Alsace in France. He and his colonists settled the towns of Castroville, De Haines, Quihue, and Vandenberg. One of the largest land grants went to the W.S. Peters Company, located in North Texas. The Peters colony covered about 16,000 square miles. Most of its colonists were Americans. New settlements and towns. Guiding question: where and why did immigrants settle in the Republic of Texas? Not everyone farmed at this time. Most Germans who came to Texas were middle-class landowners or artisans or craft workers. They generally had some property and education. The success of the first German immigrants encouraged more Germans to come. They settled in an area of south central Texas that became known as the German Belt. People of German ancestry make up the largest European ethnic group in Texas today. In northeast Texas, Jonesboro, Pecan Point, and Clarksville were the only towns by the time of the Texas Revolution. Marshall was founded in 1839 and became the county seat of Harrison County in 1842. Later, railroads helped the town grow. Jefferson, the county seat of Marion County, was founded in the 1840s. Steamboats made their way to Jefferson around 1843, and the town became a thriving commercial center. Natural resources encouraged settlement in certain parts of the Republic. Rock salt in Van Zandt County gave rise to salt mines in the town of Grand Saline. Preston was the location of a popular Red River crossing during the Republic. At one point, about 1,000 wagons crossed there each year. Dallas grew at a ferry crossing on the Trinity River. John Neely Bryan founded Dallas at this time. Towns developed along rivers in southeastern Texas too. These included Liberty on the Trinity River and Beaumont on the Neches River. In 1836, Houston was built near Buffalo Bayou. Ships could move goods from that port to others around the world. Native American raids inhibited settlement in the Brazos River Valley. One town that did arise there was Waco. It was settled by Scottish immigrant Neil McLennan in 1845. Waco was located on the site of a former Native American agricultural village. Immigrants to the hill country settled in the valleys of the Blanco, Guadalupe, and Pedernales rivers. Many settlers from Tennessee, Arkansas, and Missouri came to the area between 1840 and 1850. Germans, Alsatians, British, Poles, and Mexicans also settled there. Native American raids and outlaws slowed immigration to South Texas, but some towns grew there, including Indianola and Corpus Christi. Many Germans entered Texas at Indianola. They made it an important port. Corpus Christi was originally a center of trade with Mexico. Racial and ethnic minorities. Guiding question. What was the general experience of minority groups living in Texas during the Republic? As more Anglo-Americans and European immigrants came to Texas, other ethnic groups faced difficulties. Minorities who had lived in Texas for many years were sometimes pressured or forced to leave. Before the Republic, Tejanos were living in Nacogdoches, San Antonio, Goliad, Laredo, and far west Texas. During the Republic, Mexicans migrated into Central and South Texas. Tejanos maintained their Mexican culture. They spoke Spanish and observed Mexican holidays and Catholic traditions. However, they also took part in the culture of the Republic and its politics. Friction between Anglos and Tejanos was common after the Revolution. Some Tejanos had sided with Mexico in that fight. Because of this, some Anglos doubted their loyalty to the Republic. Anglo-Americans often viewed Tejanos with suspicion and prejudice. Many Tejanos were made to feel like strangers in their own country. As Anglo-Americans gained power in Texas, some of them took Tejano lands. A few Tejanos used the courts to regain land that had been in their families for generations. Others lost their cases in court. While many Tejanos stayed in Texas, others moved to Mexico. Most African Americans in the Republic were enslaved. The population of free African Americans was never very large. In the 1820s, some free African Americans had migrated to Texas, attracted by the full citizenship offered by the Mexican government. However, by 1860, only a few hundred free African Americans lived in Texas. William Goins was a free African American who came to Texas from North Carolina in the early 1820s. He was a blacksmith near Nacogdoches. During the Texas Revolution, he negotiated treaties and served as an interpreter for Sam Houston with Native Americans. He was trusted by Native Americans, Anglos, and Tejanos. Later in life, he made a good deal of money in real estate. After the Texas Revolution, free African Americans had their rights restricted. They were denied citizenship, and their right to marry was limited. They could not live permanently in Texas without government approval. A law passed in 1840 stated that all free African Americans who had entered Texas after independence had to leave Texas within 2 years or lose their freedom. However, some free African Americans won government permission to stay.